Thank you and good afternoon. As my presentation comes on board, I'm Engineer Mutisya from Materials, and we are bringing a different perspective of connecting the dots to save a life from our field of practice. We are generally talking about the nature and the state of the pavement as we use it in regard to safety and saving lives. And of specific concern today, we are talking about the friction or the grip. And we are calling it the grip that keeps us going. As you are aware, most of the accidents, and you look at the scenes of accidents, there is a tendency of a skid or a slipping of that vehicle. And therefore, the nature of the service is very critical for us to determine how safe our roads are. We can move to the next. Quoting a figure, although that is outdated, we can talk about what NTSA has said in terms of fatalities. In the last few years, we have been talking about 4,000 fatalities, which translates to close to 300 a day. And that's a big number. It's not a statistics. We are talking about human life being lost. And we are saying most of these incidents can be attributed to the nature of the service of our pavement. And we are saying most result from skidding of our vehicle. And we are saying as MTRD, we are able, together with the roads authorities and other implementers, be able to map out or to determine the issue of our pavement. We are looking at the skid resistance of our pavements. We are looking at getting the data on friction and identifying areas which require intervention in terms of the levels of the skid we are experiencing, and that intervention to be done on time. And that calls for collaboration between all of us so that the intervention is done on time. Then you ask yourself, why is skid crucial? Why is it important for us to determine the level of skid of our pavements? We are saying until we are able to control or manage that vehicle in terms of a sudden event on our road, then we are likely going to hit, to get into an accident. But if we are able to control that vehicle when something suddenly happens ahead of you, then we are in control of that situation. Therefore, we are saying if we can improve on that skid of our vehicle, if we can improve on that service, then we are able to address that element of accident in our environment. And we are talking about various methods of determining the level of our services. We are talking about getting the resistance using laser profilers, using a skid trailer to determine the level of our pavement. And we are talking about looking at both the micro and macro texture. The macro texture is the one which will be so critical for us when we are addressing a road in a wet condition, because we are looking at where that water will be so that our tire is still in contact with the aggregates or the service, the riding service. So if we have very minimal macro texture, we are talking about your vehicle will literally be floating on that water service, and therefore you may not have adequate control of our road. Now, we need to be able also to monitor and to map out specific areas of interest, which we normally call them the black spot, but these are areas with high prevalence of incidents and accidents. And until we narrow down exactly to what causes this, we most of the time will blame the driver, we'll blame the carelessness of the driver, the state of the vehicle, but we forget the road, the service itself might be contributing to that risk. And therefore, we need to map it out by narrowing down on these areas we call the black spot and check on the texture of these particular sections so that we may say, in addition to the vehicle itself, in addition to the driver, we also have a component of the road itself, which is contributing to these fatalities and accidents. And we are saying we can put resources together in terms of enhancing the level of our roads. This can be done by considering either both the dry and wet condition. And most of these accidents will happen in a wet condition. We are not ruling out the accident in dry condition, but part of us to check is the nature of the road and the status of that road when the accident occurs. We are looking at, from the design perspective, we are looking at the shape of the aggregates themselves in terms of allowing the passage of water when it is wet and still providing a grip on the surface. We are looking at the size of the aggregates themselves. A fine mix will always be risky because there is no area to allow the water. And we are looking at the durability of the aggregates themselves. Polished aggregates will be smooth and therefore they will not provide grit. And the skid will be an issue at place. So we look at the shape, we look at the size, and the durability of those aggregates. And that's why we have those provisions when we are doing the mixed designs. And therefore, we are looking at also solutions which are available. We can look at sub-elevation changes. Those are when we have terrains. We are looking at the asphalt concrete overlays, pavement grooving, slippery wet, when wet. Those are signages, and use of high-quality aggregates. Of course, including regular maintenance of our sections, so that we may be able to control the grip on that road. We also look at the climatic conditions. That means we are looking at the level of wetness of our services to determine what kind of a pavement we are looking at. Not only looking at the bitumen, we also look at the aggregates, the sizing of the aggregate depending on where we are doing our roads. We look at the volumes of the traffic and their composition, knowing that you require a bigger grip when you are addressing a heavy vehicle than a light vehicle. Again, we look at the speeds. These are elements we need to consider in our overall design. Most of the time, we just do a mixed design and we look at the temperature just to pick the bitumen. We ignore the aggregates as a factor of safety. Then, of course, in our road geometry, and signages are critical. We look at potential conflict movements. Again, where you expect to have sudden breaks and all that. Junctions, those are areas the pavement wears out very fast. These are areas we need to improve on in terms of safety when we address our designs and our construction. Now, for us to be able to do all that, to map out and to have enough data, we are talking about pavement and material management system, which we've developed at MTRD. And this is bringing on board the nature of our roads in terms of the evaluations we've done, the condition of these pavements. We have that information for mapping, and we can actually tell which areas we are experiencing very low skid resistance, and those areas can be collaborated with the accidents information we have, and in terms of the fatalities areas. Then we are saying, now this information, if put together, including what is available at different authorities and entities, can help us to put resources together to develop a comprehensive information system which will be able to advise us on areas which we may need to do some intervention, and these interventions to be done on time. We are saying that if we take advantage of this, identifying the skid-prone sections, then we'll be able to predict deterioration of these sections and then make appropriate intervention on time. Because once we save a life, it is better than acting when the accident has taken place. We are saying for this to continue, we're looking forward for collaboration in terms of mapping what has been already been identified as black spots. We do skid resistance on these sections, in addition to other sections, so that we may be able to pinpoint the exact cause of these fatalities in these areas, because we have similar areas with similar configuration, and yet we don't have the same number of fatalities. So the key might not be necessarily what we classify as the human error, but it could also be a design issue right from the beginning. Not forgetting that even a new pavement has its own cycle. Once you do a new pavement, the skid might be low, but over time, maybe within 2 years, when the aggregates are properly exposed, you have the highest grid. Then from there, it again starts to go down as polishing takes place. So those are the cycles we need to understand, then be able to map out on when to intervene in a particular section, so that we don't wait to get the accident, but we address before it takes place. And therefore, for us, we are saying the missing dot which we need to connect is partnership and use of ICT in our development of our roads, with our motto that we look at quality and safety as MTRD. Thank you.